Great flyweight fight coming up. We have Andrea KGB Lee taking on the Happy Warrior Roxanne Modafferi. And Matt, a lot of people very familiar with both of these fighters, and a bit of a clash of styles because you have Roxanne Modafferi that has to be one of the wonkiest strikers in the division in all of MMA maybe. She'll throw elbows up the middle. She'll throw weird strikes coming from the side. Normal people would say that they're hooks, but I would say that they're not because they're always coming at you from different angles. And that's what's given Roxanne Modafferi so much success over such a long career. I mean, I know it was talked about a lot in the week where she was going to fight Macy Barber. She had pro fights in the early 2000s. Macy Barber was very young then and still very young now. And Roxanne Modafferi, as a really big underdog in that fight, got a great win. And if you look at it really over her last 5 fights, and that's a sample size that I do like, lose a decision to Sijara Eubanks, then she beat Shevchenko by split decision, Antonina I might add, loses to Jennifer Maia, beats Macy Barber, loses to Lauren Murphy. So she's losing to quality fighters, and I even consider Sijara Eubanks up in that category. Oh, yeah. I mean, I know she couldn't make the weight going into the finals of the season, the Ultimate Fighter for the inaugural belt, but still, she was a good fighter, although her record isn't that great. Now, for Andrea Lee, if we go back last 5, she beats Veronica Macedo, she beats Ashley Evans-Smith, she beats Montana De La Rosa, she loses split to Joanne Calderwood, who trains with Roxanne Modafferi, so that makes this interesting. She loses split to Lauren Murphy. That's very interesting, Matt, because if you look at that fight and go back and watch it, Lauren Murphy won that one by split, and one of the judges gave her the fight 30-27. If you look at the media scores on MMA decisions, and please, I implore you, use this site and follow it because these people know what they're talking about, not just being our peers, but they really do know how to score fights. Every single media member scored this fight for Andrea Lee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scored at 29-28 for Lee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scored at 30-27 for Lee. That's how weird that fight was scored. I saw it for Andrea Lee, and I think that we get a bit of a gauge if we look at the two fighters here and their fights with Lauren Murphy, and I get Lauren Murphy confused with Lauren Mueller all the time, but they both have a common opponent in Lauren Murphy, and it just so happens that they both lost to Lauren Murphy. Now, unanimous split, and Andrea Lee definitely should have won that fight. The one thing here that I think really bodes well for this fight, even though Andrea Lee lost, she is a volume-heavy type of striker, and she does quite well from range. Roxanne Modafferi struggles with fighters like that, like Jennifer Maia, and like Lauren Murphy was able to do. Now, Murphy closes the gap a lot better, but I think Andrea Lee really holds well to get a win here, though.
So, Roxanne Modafferi, at least as of late, has been used as the gatekeeper for 125 because, as we've seen, her wins are over the likes of Antonina Shevchenko, Macy Barber, two kind of younger people who the UFC were really trying to push as potential faces of the flyweight division. Now, with Roxanne, she's quite a bit older in her career, and she's at the stage now where when she fights other top-level women's MMA fighters, she tends to come out on the losing side. But when she fights these up-and-coming prospects where you're not really sure where their skill level's at, since Modafferi can just kind of do everything, she really poses them and brings them hard fights. With Andrea Lee, I understand she doesn't have that many fights on her pro record. I would still consider her a veteran of the women's flyweight division because when you look at who she's been in there with, her time spent in multiple different organizations, and who she's fought, and the level of success that she's had, I did think she lost the Calderwood fight on 242. Yep. That was the first time in Abu Dhabi. But in her last fight against Murphy, I agree. I thought she won. You know what you're going to get with Andrea Lee. And I think the Montana De La Rosa fight is the really good one to take from because De La Rosa was never able to get within striking distance of Andrea Lee. And that meant a really good wrestler in Montana De La Rosa was never been able to get within clinch position or go for a takedown because Lee just could stay on her bike, land that good jab, really land good strikes from both sides.
And I think it makes a lot of sense to bring this up too because at that point in her career, Montana De La Rosa was so known for those takedowns so known for her grappling. And then we saw in her last fight last weekend where all of a sudden she's a reinvented striker. Now she lost to Araujo striking, but in the Lee fight, just primary grappler.
Exactly, and Lee really busted her up a lot in that fight. Now, at that point, I didn't think Lee was going to go on and beat Valentina by any means. So it's like, oh, it's really nice that 125... I think 125 needs a Junior Dos Santos. Now, if you've been around MMA for a long time, you might understand what I'm going to say. JDS couldn't beat Kane, but he beat everyone else pretty easily. And he was the number one contender for years and years and years. I think the women's flyweight division really needs someone like that because you know Valentina's going to beat everyone. I'm sorry to spoil that for you. Every fight Valentina's in, the next 10 fights, she's going to be an overwhelming favorite unless she fights Amanda Nunes. And she's going to beat a lot of these different women. I think you need a clear-cut number 2 contender in this division to really raise the hype. You need someone like an Andrea Lee. Like, Caitlin Chukagian's kind of becoming that right now because Chukagian seems to beat everyone not named Valentina.
Or Jennifer Maia.
But with Andrea Lee, I just think she has the skill set to beat someone like Roxanne Modafferi. Roxanne, not the most mobile at this stage in her career. She has her knees taped up like Dan Kelly near the end of his career. The weird striking is going to get her in trouble in this fight, I think, just because Andrea Lee, all of her shots are straight down the middle. She uses really good jab, really good straight right, can switch stances, isn't afraid to use kicks either. And with Modafferi, it's not like she's such a dominant wrestler that, if she can grab a kick and take Andrea Lee down, that's pretty much it. She's good on the ground. She's good on top position, but I don't think she's so good in top position that Andrea Lee can't work to get herself back to her feet. And I think on the feet, she's just going to be able to run away with this fight, literally and figuratively, because when you look at how Andrea Lee fights, it's a lot of jab, move, jab, move, jab, move. Really gets on her bike well, can move around the cage a lot. And I just think as the fight progresses, she'll be able to frustrate Modafferi and just kind of pot shot at her for the majority of it.
And if you look over at the votes on Tapology, 546 votes, 73% going Lee, 91% going with her to win by decision. If you look over at the odds, overwhelming, with Andrea Lee, open as a minus 240, now around a minus 320. So a lot of early money, which we've seen on a lot of these cards, and I pronounce money strangely there, but Modafferi opened to plus 205, and then boom, right off the bat, she goes from plus 205 to plus 285, now sitting around a plus 250. Again, I see this overwhelmingly for Andrea Lee. You have to say, though, again, Roxanne Modafferi has beaten up-and-comers. She's beaten some good talent, too. And, again, if she gets on top, the elbows from on top, the striking from on top, she has good jiu-jitsu. She trains at a really great gym. So all of these things play well in the favor of Modafferi. But at 37 years old, with that many miles on her, and she struggled with a good striker in Lauren Mueller. Or not Lauren Mueller. See, I said I made the mistake every time. Lauren Murphy. Andrea Lee looked a lot better against Lauren Murphy than Roxanne Modafferi did. Now, Matt mentioned in one of the earlier videos that MMA math degree that I hang on my wall, I have to rip it up because it means nothing. And listen, take that with a grain of salt. But I do think Andrea Lee's going to get the win. Matt agrees with me. Okay, it should be a really good fight. Really looking forward to this entire card. We get an extended look at our main event between two good fighters in Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say, Matt. Let's get into it.